James Mitchell was 34 years old and earning $58,000 a year as a high school history teacher when his wife's family made him stand outside during his own father's funeral reception, and what the reading of the will revealed 3 hours later would cost them everything they'd spent 20 years building. The November rain hammered against the windows of Riverside Memorial Chapel on East 76th Street in Manhattan. As James stood in the hallway, his $89 Target suit soaked through. Inside the reception room, his wife Catherine's family, the Westbrooks of Westbrook Capital Management, worth an estimated $47 million, laughed and drank $300 bottles of Chateau Margaux while his father lay in a casket 50 feet away. The help doesn't belong in here during family time, Catherine's mother, Patricia Westbrook, had announced loudly when James tried to enter. Though I suppose he thinks he's family now. James had heard worse from them over the past 8 years of marriage. But today, at his father's funeral, something inside him finally cracked. Not enough to make a scene, he'd learned that the Westbrooks fed on confrontation. Like sharks on blood, but enough to make him remember what his father, Robert Mitchell, had whispered to him in the hospital 3 weeks ago, when the pancreatic cancer had reduced him to 97 pounds of translucent skin and jutting bones. Let them think they've won, son. Just wait for the lawyers. James had thought it was the morphine talking. His father had been a janitor at PS 147 in the Bronx for 41 years, retiring with a pension of $31,000 annually. He'd lived in the same rent-controlled apartment on the Grand Concourse since 1983, paying $847 a month for a 2-bedroom that would cost $3,200 on the open market. The most valuable thing James thought his father owned was a 2006 Honda Civic with 587,000 miles on it. He had no idea how wrong he was. "James, sweetie, maybe you should just wait in the car." Catherine appeared in the hallway, her 2400 Burberry dress immaculate. Her expression held that particular blend of pity and embarrassment she'd perfected over the years. "Daddy's telling the story about the time you tried to explain cryptocurrency to him at the country club, and everyone's laughing so hard. It's my father's funeral, Catherine. I know, baby, I know. But you know how my family is. Just give them an hour, okay? Then we'll go home and I'll make your favorite lasagna." And then Mr. Mitchell, a man in an impeccable charcoal suit, appeared at the end of the hallway, carrying a leather briefcase with the gold-embossed logo of Thornton, Rothschild and Associates, one of the most expensive law firms in New York, with partners billing at $200 per hour. "I'm Marcus Thornton. Your father retained our services. I know this is difficult timing, but we need to conduct the reading of the will today as specified in Mr. Robert Mitchell's final wishes. The conference room is ready." Catherine's face went pale. "A will? What will?" "James, your father didn't have anything to—" "Apparently he did." James felt something strange rising in his chest. Not quite hope, he'd had that beaten out of him years ago by the Westbrooks, but something close to it. "Where's the conference room?" "3rd floor. I've already notified the other interested parties." "Other parties?" Catherine's voice climbed an octave. "What other parties?" "Your family, Mrs. Mitchell. Your father insisted they be present. If you enjoy stories of shocking family secrets and sweet tea, revenge against the wealthy elite, with a sweet reconciliation at the ending, kindly like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. The conference room on the 3rd floor of Riverside Memorial Chapel was designed for exactly these occasions, families gathering to divide estates, to discover secrets, to fight over money while a body cooled in the basement. The mahogany table could seat 20. Today it held 12. On one side, Patricia Westbrook, 61, in her 8700 Chanel suit. Her husband, Richard Westbrook, 64, founder and CEO of Westbrook Capital Management. Their son, Brandon Westbrook, 36, hedge fund manager, with a $340,000 annual salary plus bonuses. Their daughter, Melissa Westbrook Chen, 33, married to a plastic surgeon and living off a $2.1 million trust fund. And Catherine. On the other side, James alone, "This is absurd," Patricia declared. Her 3-carat diamond ring from Tiffany & Co's retail price, $127,000, catching the light as she gestured dismissively. "Marcus, I don't know what that old janitor told you, but there's clearly been some mistake. The Mitchells don't have estates. They have garage sales." Brandon snorted into his whiskey. "Pappy Van Winkle, 23-year, $30,500 a bottle, which he'd brought from the reception." "This is priceless, Dad. Can you imagine? Maybe he's leaving James his mop collection. Finally, something he's qualified to inherit." "Brandon," Catherine said weakly. But she didn't look at James. She never looked at James when her family attacked him. Marcus Thornton remained completely professional, unmoved by the Westbrooks' sneering. He'd been a lawyer for 23 years, had handled estates worth hundreds of millions. He'd seen every variety of human greed and cruelty. But there was something in his eyes, just a flicker. That made James think the man knew exactly what was coming and was enjoying the anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here for the reading of the last will and testament of Robert James Mitchell, deceased November 15th, 2024, at Mount Sinai Hospital. Mr. Mitchell worked with our firm for the past 18 years to structure his estate and ensure his final wishes were executed precisely." 18 years? Richard Westbrook frowned. "That's impossible. Your firm charges what? $500 an hour minimum. Our standard rate is $200 per hour. Mr. Westbrook, Mr. Mitchell paid in full in advance for all services rendered. Total fees came to approximately $67,000 over the 18-year period." The Westbrooks exchanged glances. James felt dizzy. $67,000 in legal fees. His father, who clipped coupons from the Sunday newspaper, who bought day-old bread from the bakery on 188th Street, who had never in James's entire life taken a vacation. That wasn't camping in the Catskills. "This is a scam," Patricia announced. "I'm calling our attorney." "You're welcome to do so, Mrs. Westbrook. However, I should mention that you are specifically named in the will, which is why your presence was requested. Leaving now would mean forfeiting your opportunity to hear what Mr. Mitchell had to say to you." That stopped her. The Westbrooks didn't forfeit anything. Marcus Thornton opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick document, bound in navy leather. "I'll begin with the preliminary statements. I, Robert James Mitchell, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. I have prepared this document with full knowledge of its contents and implications, having been advised by legal counsel at Thornton, Rothschild and Associates for the past 18 years. James's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the mahogany table. "First, I wish to address the financial inventory of my estate. At the time of this document's preparation, my total assets are valued at approximately $74.3 million. The room exploded. Patricia Westbrook's champagne glass, Baccarat crystal, $85 per glass, shattered on the marble floor. Richard choked on his whiskey. Brandon's face went from smirking confidence to pale shock in under 3 seconds. Melissa grabbed her husband's arm. Her perfectly manicured nails, weekly appointments at La Bella Vita, $450 per session, digging into his Armani suit jacket. Catherine just stared at James, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. "That's impossible," Richard managed. $74 million from a janitor's salary? This is fraud. This is all verifiable. Mr. Westbrook, I assure you every dollar is accounted for, and legal. Mr. Mitchell was quite thorough in his documentation. Would you like me to continue?" "Yes," James heard himself say. His voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. "Please continue." Marcus Thornton allowed himself the smallest smile. "The source of my wealth requires explanation, as it will surprise those who knew me only as a custodial worker. In 1983, I inherited $127,000 from my uncle Vincent Mitchell, who had no children of his own. Rather than spend this money, I invested it carefully and conservatively. I purchased a small apartment building in Williamsburg, Brooklyn for $78,000, a neighborhood that was considered undesirable at the time. I lived frugally, continued working my job, and reinvested all rental income." James remembered that building. His father had sold it in 2005. and James had thought it was because he needed money for medical bills. His mother had accumulated before she died. Over the next 41 years, I bought and sold 17 properties in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, always ahead of gentrification patterns. I purchased stock in Apple Computer in 1985 for $3 per share and held it through every split. I bought Amazon at $18 per share in 1997. I invested in Google's IPO in 2004. I purchased Bitcoin in 2011 when it traded at $7 per coin. I now hold 847 Bitcoin, currently valued at approximately $31.2 million at today's market price of $36,850 per coin. Brandon Westbrook looked like he was going to vomit. He'd spent the last 5 Christmases explaining to James very slowly, as if to a child, how cryptocurrency was a scam that only idiots fell for. I lived as a janitor because I enjoyed the work. I liked the students at PS 147. I liked having a purpose, a routine. I did not live frugally because I was poor. I lived frugally because I am not a fool. Every dollar I didn't spend on useless luxuries was a dollar that could grow, compound, and eventually provide security for my only son, James Robert Mitchell. James felt wetness on his cheeks and realized he was crying. His father, his quiet, humble father, who had packed his lunch in a brown paper bag every day, who had taught James that true wealth wasn't about impressing others, but about having choices, had been worth more than the entire Westbrook family combined. Now to the distribution of my estate, Marcus Thornton continued, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. To my beloved son, James Robert Mitchell, I leave the entirety of my financial assets, all properties, stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency holdings, and cash accounts totaling $74.3 million. This includes the following specific assets. The lawyer began reading a list that seemed to go on forever. 3 apartment buildings in Brooklyn currently generating $42,000 in monthly rental income. A mixed-use property in Queens worth $3.7 million. Stock portfolios with Fidelity, $12.4 million. Vanguard, $8.9 million. And Charles Schwab, $6.2 million. Checking and savings accounts at Chase Bank totaling $1.8 million. The Bitcoin wallet worth $31.2 million. James couldn't process it. The numbers were too big, too impossible. This morning, he'd been a high school teacher who drove a 2012 Toyota Camry with a cracked windshield. Now he was worth more than most people would earn in 1,000 lifetimes. This is... Brandon slammed his hand on the table. He's contesting this. We're contesting this. That old man was clearly senile, and James obviously manipulated. Mr. Westbrook. Marcus Thornton's voice cut through the room like a knife. I would advise you to remain silent until I finish reading, because the next section specifically addresses you and your family. The Westbrooks fell silent, but their faces were twisted with rage and disbelief. However, Marcus continued, before James can claim his inheritance, there is one condition he must fulfill. Additionally, there are several specific bequests I wish to make to the Westbrook family. Catherine grabbed James's hand across the table. See, there's a condition. You might not get it. We need to talk to our lawyer. We need to... James pulled his hand away. For the first time in 8 years, he pulled his hand away from his wife. To Patricia Westbrook, Marcus read, who once told my son at a family dinner that he would never amount to anything. Because ambition isn't genetic and certainly isn't contagious, I leave the sum of $1 with this message. You are correct that ambition isn't genetic. If it were, your children might have earned something rather than simply inheriting it. So I hope this single dollar brings you more joy than your millions have, though I doubt it will. You are a small, bitter woman who measures worth in designer labels because you have no internal value to offer the world. Patricia's face went purple. Richard grabbed her arm, but she was shaking with fury, unable to speak. To Richard Westbrook, who told James at his and Catherine's wedding reception that teachers are just failed businessmen who couldn't hack it in the real world, I leave $1 with this message. I made my fortune through patience, wisdom, and careful planning. You made yours through your father's connections and by exploiting legal loopholes in the tax code. Loopholes I documented extensively and provided to the IRS in a sealed envelope to be opened upon my death. Richard's face went from red to white. He's bluffing. That's slander. I'll sue. The evidence includes copies of documents from the Cayman Islands accounts, records of the shell corporations in Delaware, and testimony from employees at Westbrook Capital Management, who were paid by me over the past 12 years to document your illegal activities. The IRS estimates you owe approximately $18.7 million in back taxes and penalties. The room went silent, except for Richard's ragged breathing. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you have not, because the ending of this story will blow your mind. And drop a comment below telling me what you think James should do next. Marcus Thornton turned a page. To Brandon Westbrook, who told James at Thanksgiving 2022 that he was dragging down the family's collective net worth by existing. I leave $1. I also leave you the knowledge that I purchased short positions against every major investment your hedge fund made in the past 3 years. When news of your father's IRS investigation becomes public, your investors will flee, your fund will collapse, and those short positions, which I've left to James, will be worth approximately $4.3 million. Brandon looked like he might actually faint. To Melissa Westbrook Chen, who laughed when Catherine told her that James had asked for a raise at work because they were struggling to pay bills, I leave $1. And the information that your husband has been having an affair with his surgical nurse for the past 14 months. Her name is Amanda Rosenberg. She's 26 years old, and he's been paying for her apartment in Hoboken $3,400 per month, using money from the joint account you believe is for business expenses. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago when James mentioned you'd been particularly cruel to Catherine lately. I thought you might be dealing with problems at home. I was correct. Melissa's perfectly composed face crumpled. She turned to her husband, who wouldn't meet her eyes. And finally to my daughter-in-law, Catherine Mitchell, who I once hoped would be a true partner to my son. Marcus Thornton's voice softened slightly. I leave you nothing directly, because you already have access to everything James does, but I leave you with a choice and a truth. Catherine was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, her hands trembling. The choice is this. You can remain married to James and share in his inheritance, living a life of financial security you could never have imagined. Or you can choose your family, the family that has spent 8 years teaching you to be ashamed of the good, kind, hard-working man you married. But you cannot have both. The truth is this. I have been documenting every family gathering, every holiday, every wedding and birthday party for the past 8 years. James thought I was simply taking photos and videos like any proud father, but I was also recording audio on a device in my shirt pocket. I have 127 hours of your family mocking, belittling, and emotionally abusing my son while you stood by and said nothing, while you laughed along, while you chose them over him again and again and again. Catherine's sobs were the only sound in the room. James's condition for receiving his inheritance is simple. He must listen to these recordings, all of them, and then decide whether he wishes to remain married to you. The recordings are stored with Marcus Thornton and will be provided to James in their entirety. After he has listened to them, he has 6 months to make his decision. If he chooses to divorce you, you will receive nothing from his inheritance. I have structured a prenuptial trust that supersedes your marital assets, legally reviewed and approved by 3 separate law firms. If he chooses to remain married to you, you will share in his wealth. But know this, Catherine, he will have heard every laugh, every cruel joke, every moment you chose your family's approval over your husband's dignity, and he will make his choice with full knowledge of who you truly are. Marcus Thornton closed the will. That concludes the reading. Mr. Mitchell, I have the recordings on encrypted drives in my office. When you're ready, we can schedule a time for you to review them. James stood. His legs felt like water, but he managed to stay upright. He looked at his wife, her tear-stained face, her trembling hands, the Cartier watch, a wedding gift from her parents. He had $900 on her wrist that cost more than he made in 2 months. He looked at her family, their shock, their rage, their sudden fear as they realized the poor relation they'd mocked for 8 years was now the richest person in the room, the person who held evidence that could destroy them all. I'll listen to them, James said quietly. All of them. And then we'll see. He walked out of the conference room, leaving them all behind. And for the first time in 8 years, no one followed him to tell him he was making a mistake. The apartment James shared with Catherine on the Upper West Side, a 900-square-foot, one-bedroom that cost them $3,200 a month, eating up half his post-tax salary, felt different when he returned that evening. Smaller, shabbier, more honest. Catherine hadn't come home with him. She'd stayed with her family, presumably to strategize, to plan their next move. James didn't care. For the first time since their wedding at the Plaza Hotel, cost $180,000. Paid entirely by the Westbrooks, he actively preferred being alone. His phone had been ringing constantly. Catherine, 47 missed calls. Patricia Westbrook, 23. Brandon, 15. Even Melissa, who normally wouldn't be caught dead communicating directly with him, had 8 missed calls and a text message that read simply, "We need to talk." He blocked them all. Instead, he sat on the worn IKEA couch purchased for $499 in 2019. Catherine had complained about it weekly and opened his laptop. Marcus Thornton had sent an encrypted email with login credentials to a secure server. The subject line read, "Your father's gift." Inside were 127 audio files, each labeled with a date and location. Christmas 2017, Westbrook Estate, Greenwich, Connecticut. Thanksgiving 2019, Westbrook Apartment, Park Avenue. Catherine's birthday 2021, The River Cafe, Brooklyn. Easter 2023, Westbrook Country Club. James started with the oldest file from December 24, 2017, 6 months after their wedding. His father's voice came through first, slightly muffled. "James, hand me your coat. I'll hang it up." Then laughter from the main room. Patricia's voice loud and clear. "I give it 2 years, 3 at most. She's already embarrassed to introduce him to our friends." Richard's response. "He's a nice enough kid. Not bright, but nice. Nice doesn't pay for private schools or beach houses in the Hamptons," Patricia said. "She'll wake up eventually." Then Catherine's voice, the same voice that had whispered, "I love you" to James that morning. "Mom, stop. He might hear you." "Oh, please. He knows what he is. Why do you think he grabbed onto you so fast? You're his ticket to a better life. That's not... We love each other." "Love?" Patricia's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Darling, you love Chanel and summers in Tuscany. You tolerate him." Catherine's response was barely audible. "It's not like that." "Then prove me wrong. Bring him to the club tomorrow. Introduce him to the Vandermans and the Rostons. Watch him try to talk about his students while they discuss their yacht, clubs and art collections. If you're not mortified within an hour, I'll drop it." A pause. Then Catherine's voice, weaker now. "Fine, but you have to promise to be nice." "I'm always nice, darling." James stopped the recording. His hands were shaking. He remembered that day, December 25th, 2017, going to the Greenwich Country Club. Catherine had been tense all morning, snapping at him about his tie from Men's Warehouse, $47.99, his shoes, Clark's $18, his conversation topics. At the time, he'd thought she was stressed about seeing her parents. Now he understood she'd been preparing to be embarrassed, and she had been. He'd seen it in her eyes every time he spoke about his job, his students, the school's budget problems. She'd steered him away from conversations, made excuses to leave early, been silent the entire drive home. That night she'd cried and told him she loved him. He'd held her and believed her. He pressed play on the next file. Over the next 6 hours, James listened to Christmas dinners and birthday parties, engagement celebrations and casual Sunday brunches. He heard his father-in-law explain to a business associate that Catherine married a teacher. Of all things, "We're hoping it's a phase." He heard Brandon tell a group of friends that "my sister's husband is basically a professional babysitter with a degree." He heard Melissa describe him as sweet but dim to her husband's colleagues. And through it all, he heard Catherine, not defending him, not arguing, not leaving, just agreeing. Softly, reluctantly sometimes, but always ultimately agreeing. "I know he's not what you wanted for me, Mom. He does try his best, even if his best isn't very impressive. Sometimes I wonder what life would have been like if I'd married someone like Dylan Rothstein. He started his own investment firm last year. I love James, but I'm not blind to his limitations. The worst came from Thanksgiving 2022. File number 76. James had asked his principal for a raise that week, $3,500 more per year, bringing his salary to $61,500. The principal had approved it. James had been excited to tell Catherine, proud that his work was being recognized. He heard himself in the recording, telling the family at dinner. Then silence. Then Brandon's laugh. 61,000? 61,000. I spend that on my car insurance and wine budget combined. More laughter. Then Patricia. Well, at least the bar for exciting news is very low in your household, dear. And Catherine, his wife, the woman he'd held that morning and called the love of his life. I know it's not much, but it's a big deal for James. Let him have this. Not he works hard and deserves it. Not be respectful of my husband. Just let him have this. Like he was a child being humored with a participation trophy. James stopped the recording at 2:47 a.m., having made it through 89 of the 127 files. He felt hollowed out, scraped raw. Every memory of the past 8 years was recontextualizing itself in his mind. Every time Catherine had asked him not to talk about work at parties, every time she'd suggested he might be happier with his teacher, friends instead of joining her, family events, every time she'd told him to let her handle conversations with her parents about money. She hadn't been protecting him from their cruelty. She'd been protecting them from his embarrassment. His phone buzzed, a blocked number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Mitchell, Marcus Thornton's voice. I apologize for calling so late. I wanted to check in. Many people find the recordings difficult to process. You knew what was in them. I helped your father organize them. Yes, he listened to each one multiple times. Why didn't he tell me? All these years he knew what they said about me. How Catherine let them say it. And he never... He wanted to many times. But he was a wise man, Mr. Mitchell. He knew that if he told you, you might not believe it. You might think he was trying to sabotage your marriage out of jealousy or class resentment. But evidence you can't argue with. James laughed, a bitter sound. He was thorough. He loved you very much, and he understood something important. Financial security gives you the freedom to make choices based on what's right, not what's necessary. Right now you need Catherine financially. You can't afford to divorce her. You'd lose the apartment, struggle to pay legal fees, possibly damage your career if she turned vindictive. But with your inheritance, you're free. Free to choose who you want in your life, based on how they treat you, not based on economics. She's called me 47 times. I imagine she has. The Westbrooks are facing several significant problems. Richard's IRS investigation will begin within the week. Your father was quite thorough in documenting their offshore accounts. Brandon's hedge fund is built on his family's reputation and connections. When Richard goes down, Brandon follows. Melissa's husband has already moved out, according to my sources. And Patricia's entire social circle knows by now that she's been cut out of a major inheritance after mocking the beneficiary for years. How do you know all this? Your father paid me well to stay informed. He wanted you protected. James looked around the small apartment. At the shabby furniture Catherine had always hated. At the water stain on the ceiling from the upstairs neighbor's broken pipe. At the stack of student papers he'd been grading when his father died. This had been his life. Small, contained, manageable, safe. What do I do now? That's entirely up to you. Mr. Mitchell, you have 6 months to decide about your marriage, but I'd recommend you start by moving somewhere you actually want to live. Perhaps somewhere without painful memories. After Thornton hung up, James pulled up Zillow on his laptop. He filtered for Manhattan apartments in his new price range, which was essentially unlimited. Penthouses in Tribeca, $12.4 million. Luxury condos in Soho, $8.9 million. Historic brownstones in the West Village, $15.7 million. He could buy any of them in cash. The thought was dizzying. Instead, he searched for something simpler. A 3-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn Heights, near his father's old neighborhood. Exposed brick, large windows, a view of the Manhattan skyline. Listed at $2.3 million. He could buy it tomorrow without even denting his inheritance. His phone buzzed again. Catherine from her mother's phone. Please, James, we need to talk. I love you. I know I've made mistakes, but I love you. He stared at the message for a long time. Did she love him? Had she ever? Or had she loved the idea of a safe, controllable husband who would never threaten her family's dominance in their marriage? He opened file number 127, the most recent recording, his father's retirement party at PS 147, 6 months before his cancer diagnosis. Catherine had come reluctantly, complained about parking, spent most of the evening on her phone. He heard himself introducing Catherine to Mrs. Rodriguez, a colleague. This is my wife, Catherine. Catherine, Mrs. Rodriguez teaches chemistry. Lovely to meet you, Catherine said. Then to someone else, Brandon, visiting from the city for dinner afterward. Can we leave soon? This is depressing. All these people celebrating someone's retirement after 40 years of making minimum wage. It's not minimum wage, Brandon's voice amused. It's slightly above minimum wage. Very slightly. I don't know how James does it every day, surrounded by this mediocrity. Don't tell him I said that. Your secret's safe with me. Though honestly, isn't he kind of the definition of... Brandon, stop. What? It's not mean if it's true. He's a nice guy, Catherine. But let's be honest, he's not going to change the world teaching teenagers about the Civil War. He's not going to make money.